Let me take you inside the storm that's shaking Cleveland right now. Because what we just witnessed doesn't happen every day in the NFL. You expect coaches to lead with confidence, to stand tall when things get tough. But instead, what we saw from Kevin Stefanski wasn't leadership. It wasn't even strategy. It was surrender. And that one word, surrender, could define not only his season, but his entire future with the Browns. And this story isn't just about bad play calling or a single mistake. No, this goes much deeper. This is about the trust between a coach and his quarterback. It's about a locker room holding its breath, wondering who they're supposed to believe in. And most of all, it's about Sanders, a young quarterback who's been fighting every single snap to prove he's the future of this franchise, only to be yanked away from the moment he was born to own. Let's rewind to that decision, the 2-minute drill. That's the moment that makes or breaks quarterbacks. It's the stage where legends are born, where coaches say, "Kid, here's the ball, show me what you've got." And what does Stefanski do? He takes the ball out of Sanders' hands. He denies him the chance to lead. He throws in Snoop Huntley, an emergency fill-in, a guy who was signed just to patch holes. And the explanation? He needed to get tuned. Tuned? In the last 2 minutes of a game? When your city is watching? When your fan base is begging to see their young quarterback prove himself? That's not an explanation. That's an insult. That's a coach showing the world he doesn't trust his own guy. And you could see it in Stefanski's body language. The man wasn't just defending a football decision. He was defending himself, his job, his credibility. His voice was shaky. His words stumbled. He didn't look like a leader who believed in what he was saying. He looked like a man cornered, fighting to survive. And the reaction? Instant. The locker room shifted. The offensive line that had been battling for Sanders, shaken. Contracts cut. Players waved. The organization looked less like a football team and more like a house of cards collapsing in real time. And that's when the criticism began to pour in. Former Browns receiver Houshmandzadeh didn't hold back. He said what a lot of fans were already thinking. This doesn't look like coaching, it looks like bias. He accused Stefanski of actively working against Sanders, of holding some kind of personal grudge that has nothing to do with football. And if that's true, then this isn't just a bad call, it's sabotage. Think about that. A head coach in the National Football League appearing to go out of his way to make his own quarterback look bad. That's not just a controversy, that's a crisis. And the fans, they've already chosen their side. They're chanting for Sanders. They want him under center, week 1, game 1. They're not calling for patience. They're not asking for a competition. They're demanding it. Sanders is the guy. Sanders is the future. And every time Stefanski makes another excuse, every time he pulls another stunt, those chants grow louder. And here's the part that makes it even worse for Stefanski. This isn't the first time. We've seen this story before. Go back to that first preseason game. Sanders stepped onto the field and played with poise, accuracy, confidence. He looked like a player who had been in the league for years, not a rookie. And instead of celebrating that moment, instead of praising him, Stefanski downplayed it. He brushed it off with vague comments about developing all the quarterbacks. No, that wasn't development. That was erasure. That was Stefanski making sure the spotlight didn't stay on Sanders for too long. And now, after pulling him in the most crucial drive of the game, it's impossible to ignore the pattern. Houshmandzadeh called it out perfectly. He said Stefanski almost wants Sanders to fail, that he's setting him up just so he can point and say, "See, he wasn't ready." That's not how a coach is supposed to act. Coaches are supposed to elevate their players, to help them succeed, to put them in positions where their best qualities shine. Instead, Stefanski looks like a man who's protecting his ego, not his team. And here's the irony. The more he tries to bury Sanders, the more he buries himself. Because the fans aren't blind. They can see the fire in Sanders' play. They can see the potential. And when the coach refuses to believe in the guy who clearly gives the team the best shot, it doesn't just damage the player. It damages the coach's credibility. That's what's happening right now. Stefanski's decisions aren't hurting Sanders' reputation, they're torching his own. Let's be honest, Stefanski looks like a man living on borrowed time. His body language screams it. His press conferences confirm it. And now, after weeks of brushing Sanders aside, he suddenly flips the script and says he'll work on developing him. That's not conviction, that's desperation. That's survival mode. And survival mode never works in the NFL. Once the fans smell blood, once the locker room senses weakness, once the media starts circling, it's only a matter of time. You can't coach scared. You can't coach with your ego. And you sure can't win when the entire city believes you're sabotaging your quarterback. So here's the cold truth. Sanders isn't the problem in Cleveland. He's the solution. He's the hope. He's the reason fans still believe the Browns have a future. And if Stefanski can't see that, if he keeps yanking Sanders, keeps undercutting him, keeps trying to prove some twisted point, then it won't be Sanders who gets run out of Cleveland. It'll be Stefanski. And I'll leave you with this question, because I want to hear what you think. Is this sabotage? Is Kevin Stefanski really setting Sanders up to fail so he can protect his own pride? Or is this just a coach crumbling under the weight of the pressure, making desperate choices he can't justify? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button if you're as fired up about this as I am. And don't forget to subscribe, because trust me, this story is only heating up. Sanders' fight for the starting job is just beginning, and the battle between him and Stefanski could define not just this season, but the entire future of the Cleveland Browns. Listen, I've seen a lot of questionable coaching decisions in the NFL. I've seen botched timeouts, missed challenges, and quarterbacks being left out to dry. But what's happening in Cleveland right now with Kevin Stefanski and Sanders? This feels different. This feels bigger. And I'm telling you, it's not just the fans in the cheap seats noticing anymore. The spotlight is burning hotter, and everyone from analysts to former players is calling it what it really is, a setup. And nobody spelled it out more clearly than Chad Ochocinco. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't hold back. He said Kevin Stefanski put Sanders in a position where success wasn't just unlikely, it was impossible. Think about that. This isn't me saying it. This isn't a frustrated fan ranting on Twitter. This is a guy who's been in the league, who's played alongside some of the greatest to ever touch the field. He flat out accused Stefanski of orchestrating failure. How did he do it? By surrounding Sanders with offensive players who simply weren't roster-worthy. Guys who couldn't separate, couldn't hold their blocks, couldn't give him the slightest chance to execute. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, you call plays that don't even suit his strengths? That's not just bad coaching. That's sabotage wearing a headset. And Ochocinco made a point that should haunt every Browns fan. He said even Tom Brady, the legend, the 7-time Super Bowl champion, the man who defined quarterback greatness, would have looked bad in that situation. Let me say that again. Even Tom Brady would have failed with those players around him. So what chance did Sanders have? None. Absolutely none. But here's the part that really twisted the knife. Ochocinco warned that the critics, the ones tied to the organization, the ones who never dare step out of line, would spin this whole thing. They'd turn Sanders into the scapegoat. They'd start labeling him as a bust, a fifth-string quarterback, a mistake. And not because that's the truth, but because that's the easier story to tell. You don't have to change anything if you make it all Sanders' fault. You don't have to admit your system is broken if you convince people that kid just wasn't good enough. But let me stop right there, because the fans aren't stupid. They see what's happening. They're not buying into this corporate fairy tale that paints Sanders as the villain. They're looking at Stefanski. They're pointing fingers at the head coach. And the calls for his resignation, they're not just whispers anymore. They're shouts, chants, demands. Every week the pressure is mounting, and every week the leash on Stefanski gets shorter. And then Skip Bayless came crashing into the conversation. Say what you want about Skip, love him or hate him, but he's been covering this league for decades. And when he says something, people take notice. Skip didn't just criticize Stefanski, he condemned him. He called the Browns' handling of Sanders the worst possible way to manage a player. The worst. Not bad, not questionable, the absolute bottom of the barrel. And he's right, because this isn't just one mistake you can sweep under the rug. This isn't just a bad game plan or one bad night. This is a pattern, a consistent, deliberate pattern of mismanagement. Sanders wasn't given meaningful reps. He wasn't supported with the right personnel. He wasn't trusted in crucial moments. Instead, everything about his development has been sabotaged by decisions that scream negligence. And here's where it gets chilling. Stephen A. Smith called this months ago. Go back to Sanders' very first preseason start. Stephen A. stood up and said, "The Browns are setting this kid up for failure." At the time, people laughed. They said he was being dramatic. They said it was just hot air for ratings. But now, look around. Every single warning he gave is coming true. From the questionable rotations to the bizarre play calling, it's almost like he read the script before it even played out. And that's what makes this feel so deliberate. When you stack it all together, the lack of practice reps, the offensive line that couldn't protect a cardboard cutout, the receivers who couldn't create space, the play calls designed for failure, it doesn't look like incompetence anymore. It looks like intent. It looks like someone wanted Sanders to fall flat so they could say, "See? We told you he wasn't ready." And then you hear stories from guys like G. Bush who talk about Sanders' work ethic, about how he shows up to practice hours early, about how he stays late long after everyone else has left, about how he puts in the work, grinding day and night, doing everything possible to prove himself. That's what you want in your quarterback. That's what you build a franchise around. And yet, despite all of that, he was never a priority, never their guy, never the plan. That's the part that should make every Browns fan furious. Because when a young quarterback gives you everything, when he sacrifices his time, his body, his energy to prove himself, the least you can do as a coach is meet him halfway. But Stefanski didn't meet him halfway. He didn't even meet him a quarter of the way. He threw him into the fire and walked away. And now, the entire football world is watching the fallout. Analysts, former players, fans, they're all calling it out for what it is. Mismanagement at best, sabotage at worst. Sanders wasn't nurtured. He wasn't guided. He was set up. And when the story of his struggles gets told, too many people are leaving out the most important part, that the deck was stacked against him from day one. So here's where we stand. The pressure on Kevin Stefanski has never been greater. Fans are demanding change, analysts are demanding accountability, and the city of Cleveland is standing at a crossroads. Do they admit their mistakes and finally give Sanders the chance he deserves? Or do they let another promising career get swallowed whole by a broken system? And that's the question I'll leave with you. Was this just bad judgment from a coach in over his head? Was this arrogance? Or was this something worse? Was Sanders deliberately set up to fail? I want to know what you think. Should Stefanski step down right now? Should the Browns wipe the slate clean and give Sanders the fresh start he's earned? Or is there still a path, somehow, for this coach to turn it around? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because make no mistake, this isn't just another NFL storyline. This is bigger. This is the fight for Sanders' future. And whether you love him or doubt him, one thing is clear. The way he's being treated is unacceptable, and the time for excuses is over.